So, Jim, what did you think of Theater of Blood?
I really enjoyed it. Again, as you had prefaced this many, many, many months ago, you had said this is exactly like Fibes, but much better, and I totally agree with you. It was funny. All the comedy bits were done pretty well. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about it. It was just a fun, fine Vincent Price movie. I mean, you're coming to this to watch Vincent Price and nothing else really, and his overacting.
But the bums steal the show.
Exactly, you're right.
They do. The bums have their moments. You can't overlook that.
No, especially when they're like half covered in mud pulling Vincent Price out of the Thames. I'm like,
oh my god, it's so disgusting.
It's
so disgusting.
Everything looks gross. I'm like, I don't even want to imagine being there. And you've walked next to the Thames, you know it smells like shit half the time.
Yeah.
Like, imagine that. Ugh, disgusting, dirty bums. Yeah, I think Vincent Price is just fantastic in this.
He's the perfect guy for this role. I mean, who else pulls off this role with this level of sincerity, with also nailing the comedic bits? Because he comes off as, when he's doing his Shakespeare stuff, he comes off as a Shakespearean actor, but a very, very old-fashioned Shakespearean actor. Like the type of Shakespearean acting that honestly nowadays, if we see it, we wouldn't say it's good.
Yeah,
but that also makes sense because he didn't win the award, so it really does make sense.
Well, exactly, and I'm thinking maybe that's why, because you were saying at the beginning that what magazine was talking about Fibes' like 50-year anniversary or whatever.
Oh, I think it was a Fangoria thing. It might have been a Bloody Disgusting thing on that website, but I think it was Fangoria.
Going back to your point about, for some reason Theater of Blood doesn't have like this cult following that Fibes seemingly does, and I think it does go back to this whole Shakespeare thing, but it also goes back to that classic Shakespearean acting, where maybe some people think that Vincent Price is just like too over the top or something, but really he's actually perfect. He's hitting the nail on the head constantly throughout this whole movie with his acting chops.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Diana Rigg here too.
Yeah, she does a fine job.
Actors. I think Ian Hendry, I wouldn't say consistently he's funny or anything, but he nails that last line of the movie pretty well. Like, I'll give him that. I think he's good. Madeline Smith, as I mentioned, is there. She's in the background of the final scene. You could see her when we have that final line. I don't know why she's there. She's always just like in the background. Like, you have Madeline Smith from Live and Let Die, The Vampire Lovers, one of the Hammer Frankenstein movies. I can't remember which one. Like, she's great. Use her more. Beautiful woman too. Yeah. Theater of Blood, I think, is very, very good. I think our biggest complaint with Fibes was, or at least mine was, I can't speak for you, I don't remember, but my biggest complaint with Fibes was that there wasn't much connecting Fibes with the methods of killing people, like the Bible connection in that movie, because he killed people based on the plagues of Egypt. That was like, had nothing to do with him. That was like his wife's. Like, wasn't it like his wife a biblical scholar? Well, no, he's a biblical scholar, I guess. Excuse me, but those had nothing to do with his wife.
Yeah,
here in this movie, there's much more of a connection between killer and killing method, as well as the person being the victims and the thing. There's even like a connection with the character that kind of hits on Diana Rigg and has a thing for Diana Rigg. He gets his heart ripped out. Like, there's somewhat of a connection there. His name's also Dickman, by the way.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And obviously the one person dies by eating his beloved poodles to death. Yeah, so there's this, and then I'm thinking like,
well, and
a lot of the other deaths aren't really, they don't have that kind of ironic quality to them, but those two do at least.
Yeah, all the deaths though, as you mentioned, they were connected to the theater, Shakespeare, and more specifically Edward Lionheart. Yeah, and more specifically the bums. You're right. The
bums. But I'm serious. This is a movie. You Vincent Price is the star. He's the reason this movie exists. But honestly, the bums are great. All the props to them. We didn't mention the scene where Inspector Boot has a bum and he's withholding liquor from him to get him to tell him where Lionheart's lair is. It's like right before the climax of the movie. He's like, now tell me where Lionheart is and I'll give you this alcohol.
Dude, I just looked it up on Wikipedia. All the people labeled, or all the bums, they are credited as meth's drinker. Meth's
as
drinker.
What drinker?
Meths. Meths.
Huh. So
is that like liquid meth? Like, yeah, is that?
Well, it is blue, so maybe
Yeah.
some Breaking Bad connections here.
Yeah, a meth's drinker. Huh.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's a great movie. This is a movie I have recommended to like 3 people.
Awesome. This is a movie that I've tried recommending to people because I'm in postgraduate English programs, and you'd think people would be digging this shit, but honestly, no one seems to care whenever I talk about this movie. And I'm like, come on. Like, we had this thing where all the English graduate students at one of the universities I was at, we did this thing where like each week in October we would watch a horror movie, and I'm like, yo, Theater of Blood, come on. Like, listen, I know no one's heard of it, but it's a Shakespeare horror movie, and it's got Vincent Price in it. Yeah, so instead we're watching Silence of the Lambs, The Crow, all these shitty movies, and we could be watching Vincent Price ham it up as Shakespeare. Or as Richard III.
Yeah, and too, there's actually, I'm reading this Wikipedia page as we're talking, and the film was originally supposed to be titled Much Ado About Murder.
That's a fun title, but that doesn't... I guess A Theater of Blood's a great... They're both fun titles. Theater of Blood is, I think, more appropriate. It's also funny because Rick Sloan, director of the Vice Academy series... I know you weren't there, Jim, but we just talked about that last week. He directed a movie called Blood Theaters. so there's a Rick Sloan connection with this film, too, unfortunately. That man will not escape my life, no matter how badly I want him to. But yeah, Much Ado About Murder is good. That sounds to me more like a murder mystery with like slightly comedic elements.
It sounds like an
Theater
Agatha Christie book.
Sounds like a horror movie. Yeah, a little bit. Like a tongue-in-cheek Agatha Christie. Like a... Manhattan Murder Mystery with Woody Allen. It sounds like something like that.
Yeah.
If I want to know there's a horror movie about this, monster played by a critically acclaimed actor, all I need to see is, well, honestly, just Woody Allen's name in the credits. But in this case, like Theater of Blood, I do think great title. I agree it doesn't hammer the Shakespeare in, but, I mean, just watch the movie. I mean, it's good. I think it's very good.